Hello. My name is Twilight Greenaway. I am a writer and editor. I focus on food and agriculture, and I work with Civil Eats. And I've been reporting on the food system for over a decade. My colleagues and I are very focused on shining a light on underrepresented populations. And for us, that often means folks who are working within the food system, but also those who are living nearby large animal and other farm operations who are involved not necessarily by choice, but just because they live in rural areas. So today we're going to be focusing on both of those populations. And just for a little bit of context, there are, on the worker side, there are 21.5 million people working in food. That's one out of every 7 workers in the U.S. Those workers are some of the worst paid in the country. They are, while the jobs themselves have, the numbers of jobs have increased, those workers are, they don't generally have access to unions very much anymore. They are using SNAP and other benefits at a often quite a significant rate, twice I've seen. Some would say the bottom of the hierarchy, unfortunately, is the farm workers who are working enormously long hours, often getting paid really unfortunate rates, and they deal with really difficult working conditions. On the other side of the coin, we have people whose lives and property values are impacted just by their proximity to large farms. And these folks are dealing with everything from persistent odors that raise their blood pressure to actual animal waste that rains down out of the sky on their homes and their vehicles. And these folks, their basic human needs, as well as often their health, has been ignored for years in the name of expansion and regulatory pushback by the pork and poultry industries. For more context, there are 9.5 million hogs in North Carolina, and they produce 15,000 Olympic swimming pools worth of waste a year. So both of these communities are working hard to carve out basic rights in the face of significant hurdles, and I'm excited that we're here to talk about them today. I wanted to introduce our panel. To my left is Larry Baldwin, and he is the Crystal Coast Waterkeeper and also the Executive Director of Coastal Carolina River Watch. He is heavily involved in the fight against corporate-controlled CAFOs, and he's been working with environmental justice organizations and the communities they serve to stop the negative impacts of the swine and poultry industry. Further down is Crispin. Hi, Crispin. Crispin Hernandez. And he came to the U.S. from Mexico to work on a large New York dairy farm as a teenager in 2012. After he was injured on the job and received no medical treatment from his employers, he became involved in organizing and educating fellow farm workers about their rights. He subsequently lost his job. He was fired by his employers in retaliation. And he became the lead plaintiff in a historic lawsuit by the New York Civil Liberties Union that overturned a state law, and this is a big one, barring farm workers from organizing. He's now a worker leader for the Workers' Center for Central New York. And to his left is Rebecca Fuentes, who is going to be translating for him, but is also here on her own account. And she's the lead organizer at the Workers' Center of Central New York in Syracuse. She has been working with the dairy workers to organize for fair, safe, and humane working conditions. So thank you all for being here. We're going to start with a short film that the Food Integrity Campaign has made.
A number of different levels. Now, being environmentalists, that's kind of our focus, but that has just by nature an environmental justice aspect to it. So we really started looking at where these facilities are located in comparison to communities of color. Black, Hispanic, some Native American, low income. Communities that do not typically have the voice, they don't have the financial ability to do anything significant about the situation that they've been placed under. These communities were here first, is a key thing to remember with this issue. It was been the last 25, 30 years that these swine CAFOs, hog CAFOs, have started to show up in eastern North Carolina, to the point where there are now 2,400 hog lagoons in North Carolina. So we really started working with a number of community organizations to really try to illustrate what the problem is.
I've been here in 1979 at first. My mother was here. There was no homeless. And then I left and found a house in Warsaw and I rent. And then I moved back when my mother got sick. And I moved back here and my mother died in 95. I moved in 97. The hog house right there was not there. And later on in years, by him being the sheriff, he's the sheriff himself, the Dibley County Sheriff Department. He built the hog houses on the road because I was told that you couldn't build houses on the road. You know, not so you can see them. You can see chicken houses, turkey houses, but not hog houses. And I began to get curious. So we started having a meeting called Reach. And we started talking about the hog house that was in the 80s. We started talking about the hog house. So I got on the board. I was on the board of Reach, and we went around. And then every time he would spray, I would call one of them to come over. And we would video. I always video. I always like take pictures. And we got lawyers out of Georgia. Got a lawyer out of Virginia, but they was paid off. We probably had 5 lawyers. We went to James Front, Dibley County. We went to Raleigh to the legislature. We got thrown out of there. I'm talking about the hog house because they said we was lying. We said, why don't y'all come down to our area and see what we're talking about? And so we decided that we would get some of the hog lagoon, hog poop, and take it and put on the legislative green grass. That was the best. That was good. So we all got through it. So we did that. So we went back and forth. We went to Wilmington. We went to Rocky Mount. We had meetings all over. But there was nothing never did until probably 6 years ago.
Larry, do you want to talk a little about your work?
Sure. Is this one on too? Let me start off first as to kind of why I'm here. If you've seen the film Eating Animals, a couple of our colleagues back there, Craig Watts and Jim Keene, are in that film, as is our very own Amanda Hitt. So a few months ago, she said, can I come down and bring a few people and take a look at what you've got? Let me see it up close. So that's where the aerial view came from. Let me back up just a minute. We all know the influence that Amanda has just across the board. Well, this is part of that. And let me explain why. This is kind of a hybrid appearance for me today. I talked to Amanda a couple weeks ago. I said, so what's the attire here? Because this is not normal for me. And she said, well, it's business casual. Well, I said, well, business casual to me means a long sleeve shirt. But she said, wear, business casual. So I went to my wife. I said, what does business casual mean? She said, you cannot wear a sleeveless shirt. But in talking with Amanda, she said, if you show up at the conference without your do-rag on, she's not going to let me in the door. So this is in honor of Amanda, who says, this is what I look like a lot in the field. So anyway, that's how we got to that point. So just want to clarify that, okay. So I think what really came out of that, and if you haven't seen Eating Animals, it's one I would recommend that you see. It gives the opportunity to really kind of shine some light on just what's going on in eastern North Carolina. There's a lot of good films out there. Even this one being just a short film kind of gives you a real feel for what's going on. I do want to give a shout out to Miss Jamie Berger over here, who's in the process of putting together another film, which we've seen the previews. It's going to blow the doors off of some people. So look for that one coming out. Eastern North Carolina is well, I'll clean it up a little bit. It's a crap hole. Okay? The 2,400 cesspools is what I refer to them. They're not lagoons, because a lagoon is a place in the Caribbean where you sit around in your bikini and your shorts and you have Mai Tais. These are cesspools. Pits the size of a football field or larger, full of hog feces and urine. You add to that the impact of poultry, and primarily from the chicken industry. We are now probably number 2 in chicken production in the country, in North Carolina, thanks to the influx of Sanderson farms, and it just continues to grow. One of the major issues with the poultry is that it's very unregulated. To put up a poultry barn, you need a county building permit. That's it. When it comes to regulations, a little more involved to put in a hog lagoon or a hog facility, but we're currently under a permanent ban, so we can't even build any new swine facilities. And I'm sorry, I don't call them farms either, because they're not really farms. But what that all comes down to for me, I started as a river keeper in 2002, and it was pretty much an environmental job. Figure out what's going on with the water, regardless of the impact, regardless of the source. But you cannot look at the water quality in North Carolina without relating that directly to what's happening with these CAFOs, the concentrated animal feeding operations, whether it's swine or poultry. So it quickly became very evident that we're not really doing our job if we just focus on the environment. So it was very early on that I got introduced to a number of environmental justice organizations. You heard Renee Miller talk about REACH, stands for Rural Empowerment Association for Community Health. It's in one county, but there's also the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, organizations that are specifically fighting the injustices that are happening in eastern North Carolina because of what you saw in this film. I would challenge any one of you, if you don't think this is real, come spend 2-3 days with me. If you're up for it, we'll get you in an airplane. You can see that what we're telling you is unbelievable. Where you have a CAFO facility, you have a poultry facility, all mixed together. There are places from that airplane that you can look 180 degrees and see 100 CAFOs. We have residents down there. One African-American gentleman, he has 5 CAFOs within a half a mile of his house. How many of you ever smelled a hog cesspool? Okay. Chicken, smelled poultry. What I tell people is, like, if you decide that you want to start a diet, forget about Slim Slow or whatever, NutriFast or whatever they're called. Every day before you eat, come spend a little bit of time next to a hog lagoon, hog cesspool. You won't want to eat. It is the most overpowering, disgusting odor that there is. You look at the impact from the odor from the poultry. To me, it's even worse because it's a particulate. Yeah, you can kind of taste it. But we're forcing people to live in those conditions every day. Dr. Steve Wing, a number of years ago, put together a map of all of the, particularly the swine CAFOs. And he took a map of the former slave locations and put them over top of each other. It was almost an exact match. We have taken the opportunity to force communities of color, low-income communities, to deal with what we're getting the benefit from. They're being forced to live in conditions that we would never even consider. So from an environmental standpoint, yeah, we have some serious problems in eastern North Carolina. We have one creek in Duplin County, 3.2 miles long. It has 41 CAFOs directly draining into that creek. If you're familiar with the science a little bit, bacteria is one of the levels we check. Fecal coliform. Fecal coliform in North Carolina, the standard is 400 colonies per 100 milliliters. We have taken samples from this one creek, excuse me, 120,000. So the question, okay, so you're having all these problems. Why isn't anything being done? My response to that is, why isn't anything being done? Because it is the most frustrating thing to have to deal with this every day. And I'm sorry, but our state legislature is, well, I shouldn't say all of them. Some of them are pretty good. Not many of them, but a couple. Okay, 2. Maybe 3. They're criminal, as far as I'm concerned. It's a criminal offense in my mind. And I believe if the folks of you who know the Clean Water Act probably much better than I do, Clean Water Act specifically states we don't have the right to influence water quality in a negative way that impacts our neighbor. I don't know about you all, but that looks like neighbors being impacted in a very horrible way. Renee Miller, in my mind, is one of the biggest heroes out there, along with Elsie Herring, number of people down there who are standing up at their own personal risk and saying, this is wrong. But it's very difficult when you're in that position, when you're part of those communities, to have the courage to do that because you live there, okay? I refer to myself when I talk with the folks in Eastern North Carolina, the communities of color, I have white privilege because I can get up and go home. The closest CAFO to me is 17 miles. I don't smell it. But we forced these communities to endure something that you wouldn't ever have your family member endure. At what point do we say enough is enough? You know, there's been a lot of great discussions about policy and about what we eat and how we do it. It's all great stuff. And there's probably not one single solution to this thing. But the first solution or the first thing to solve in this issue to me is what we're doing to the people in Eastern North Carolina, in Iowa, in Nebraska, in Arkansas, just so we can stick our fork in a piece of meat that's cheaper than if it was farm raised. Sorry, I start to get a little bit emotional, but to me, it's more than a travesty. It is actually criminal what we're allowing to happen to the people in Eastern North Carolina, just so we can put cheap meat on our table. So think about that. If you want, call me, email me, say, I want to come see what it is that you're seeing. You will go home with a whole different perspective than what you have today. Thank you.
Crispin, do you want to go next? So he's going to be speaking in Spanish, and then we'll get consecutive translation from Rebecca.
Hola, ¿me escuchan? Okay.
Hello.
Sí, solo que me tengo que introducir en mixteco. Ajá. Hola a todos, mi nombre es Crispin Hernández.
Hi everyone, my name is Crispin Hernandez.
Y soy mixteco, vengo de una familia indígena y del sur de México y vengo donde nació el maíz.
I am Mixtec from the south of Mexico. I come from an indigenous family, and I am from where the corn was born.
Y ahorita soy organizador del Centro de Trabajadores de Nueva York Central y es un placer para mí estar con todos el día de hoy.
And I am an organizer, worker leader with the Worker Center of Central New York, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Ajá, y solo para introducirme en mixteco, lo que es en español, ¿verdad?
I would like to introduce myself in my native language, and just
Masanani aku Crispin Hernandez, behisan aku in haku nani aku meigo, no ni kago no ni te aku wisiku sinisa, ha ni kesanra, kastunsa no ni ditaga ni tego behisan kundo, te kusinisa ni kesan no kajoni no bani. Sí, pues ir traduciendo. Se me fue la onda. Okay.
es lo mismo que he dicho. Okay.
Sí, pues lo primero que voy a empezar es a hablar mi experiencia personal y mi vida personal y todo lo que enfrentamos nosotros a los inmigrantes de Centroamérica.
First, I want to talk about my own personal experience and what we faced as immigrants from Latin America.
Sí, yo estaba en el 2012, antes de tomar la decisión de venir aquí en este país.
Before having taken the decision to come to the United States in 2012, I was in my country, in Mexico.
Recibimos una noticia que falleció unos de nuestros paisanos muy cerquita, alrededor donde estamos viviendo, que él falleció en un accidente aquí en la industria lechera, aquí en el estado de Nueva York.
While I was back in Mexico, we received a very bad news of one of our, a young man who lived also by the town where we lived, that he had died working in New York, in upstate New York.
Y él se llamaba Genaro y tenía como 21 años.
His name was Genaro and he was about 20 years old.
Ajá. Al escuchar yo esa noticia fue muy triste y pues no solo para mí, sino todo alrededor de nosotros donde vivía él.
When I heard that news, it was very sad, not only for me, but for everyone in our community.
Y yo siempre decía a mi familia que quería venir a trabajar, pero al escuchar ellos esa noticia, pues no me querían dejar venir.
I always told my family that I wanted to come here and work, but when my family heard that news of the worker that died, the young man who died, they didn't want to let me come in here.
Siendo así, pues yo tomé la decisión de venir. En aquel entonces tenía 17 años.
I still made the decision to come here and work. I was 17 years old.
La razón que lo hice es para apoyar económicamente a mi familia y para sostenerme yo mismo.
The reason why I did that was to support myself and my family.
Fue una decisión muy difícil,
It was a very hard decision to make,
pero lo hice por la necesidad.
but I did it out of necessity.
Al dejar la familia, dejamos un vacío muy profundo con ellos.
When we leave our family, we leave a very deep sadness with them,
Tanto ellos como mi persona.
in them and in myself.
Y al venir o al seguir caminando en el desierto, uno no sabe lo que le espera.
When you come here walking in the desert, you never know what awaits you.
Uno arriesga toda nuestra vida sin saber qué es lo que va a pasar,
You risk your life without knowing what is going to happen.
sufriendo hambre y sed, caminando en el desierto.
Suffering hunger and thirst walking in the desert.
Y escondiéndose de los agentes de inmigración que que siempre están vigilando, ¿verdad?
And hiding from the immigrant agents, Border Patrol, who are always looking for you.
Ajá. En mi persona tardé 15 días y llegué en mi destino, por suerte, pero hay muchas personas que no logran llegar.
For myself, it took me 15 days to get to my destiny, but there are so many others who don't make it.
Yo llegué en otro estado, pero por ser menor de edad no me quisieron dar trabajo.
I first arrived at another state, not New York, but there the work that was available, they didn't want to give me a job because I was underage.
Y luego me mudé a Nueva York y mi primer trabajo fue en la industria lechera. Estamos hablando en el 2012.
Then I moved to New York, and my first job was at a dairy farm, and we're talking about 2012.
Cuando llegué en este rancho que se llama Marfan, al norte de Nueva York,
When I arrived at this farm, it's called Mark's Farms in the north of in upstate New York.
no conocía a nadie y en ese año pues no sabía mis derechos como trabajador agrícola.
I didn't know anyone, and I didn't know that I had any rights as a dairy farm worker.
Y después de eso, en el otoño de 2012, tuve un accidente, pues honestamente una vaca pisó mi mano y pues los dueños, yo le dije a los dueños, pero en ningún momento me llevaron al hospital.
In the first winter that I was there, I had an accident. A cow stepped on my hand, and it was, and the owners did not help me to go to the doctor or to get any support.
En ese momento sentí tan feo por el dolor, pero seguí trabajando lo mismo por la necesidad.
In that moment, I felt very bad and hurt because of the accident, but I just had to keep working because of the necessity.
La razón que pasó eso por falta de entrenamiento.
And I think this happened because of lack of training.
Yo nunca he trabajado con animales como las vacas, ¿verdad? Que son tan grandes en esta industria.
I had never worked with cows, those are big animals, and never worked in this kind of industry.
Después de eso, en el 2013, cuando conocí a Rebeca y el Centro de Trabajadores y Centro de Justicia, cuando llegaron a dar un entrenamiento de salud y seguridad en una de las trailers donde vivían mis compañeros.
After this, I remember meeting Rebecca and another from the Worker Center and the Worker Justice Center. They came to the farm, to the house, to give us a training.
Sí, en aquel entonces pues me di cuenta que tenía derecho como trabajador.
That's when I realized and learned that I had rights as a worker.
Ajá. Yo trabajaba 12 horas, 6 diarias, 12 horas diarias, 6 días a la semana y recibiendo el salario federal que es $7.25.
I worked 6 days a week, 12-hour days for minimum wage.
Después de mi salario, pues me pusieron como mi trabajo enfocado fue en por ejemplo, ordeñar las vacas, ¿verdad? Que pueden ver el video un ratito ahorita.
And then the work that I was assigned was to do the work like in the video, milking the cows. So we can see a little part right now. Si quieres ir hablando mientras lo pongo. Continúa.
Okay.
Lo puedes describir. Maybe just not all of it, but.
Como pueden ver, es un trabajo muy intenso, mucha actividad.
As you can see, there's a very intense work with a lot of activity.
De los 12 horas, tiene que uno andar como trabajando, corriendo en el lugar del trabajo.
On the 12 hours, you feel like you have to be running all the time, working very intensely.
Tan solo 7 horas tiene uno que ordeñar 2.500 vacas.
In that time, you have to, in this particular farm, milk 2,500 cows.
Y solo éramos dos trabajadores.
There's only 2 milkers.
Como pueden ver en la parla se usa mucho químico con mucho olor de las vacas.
You can see in the parlor, we use a lot of chemicals, and then you smell. You have the smell of the cows.
A pesar de que yo usaba 3 par de guantes, hasta tenía yo las uñas pintadas de color amarillo.
Even though I wore 3 gloves at the same time, my fingernails will become yellow because of the chemicals.
Es un trabajo que se hace con mucha agilidad. Me acuerdo cuando salía a las 12 horas, sentía que ya no tenía los brazos.
It's a job that you do it's very physically demanding. I remember when we were done with work, I couldn't even feel my arms.
Ese es mi trabajo, pero en general yo y mis compañeros, cada uno de ellos o nosotros teníamos diferentes rutinas o diferente trabajo haciendo en el rancho.
So that was my job, but there's other people that had other jobs in different places in the dairy, in the farm.
Por ejemplo, donde nacen las becerras.
For example, you have the parts where the calves are born.
Otros trabajadores le echan comida a las vacas o dando leche a las becerras también.
Others feed the cows, or they give the milk to the calves.
Otro trabajador puchando las vacas que lleguen a la ordeña.
Other workers pushing the cows from where they're staying from the stalls to the parlor, so that they be milked.
Otros trabajadores hacían el trabajo de poner medicina para las vacas.
Other workers doing duties kind of like a vet, putting medicine for the cows.
Todos teníamos un trabajo enfocado, pero es una rutina, ese es el trabajo colectivo que nos organizamos y por eso sale la producción del rancho, lo que quiere el patrón.
So we all have to work. It's a very organized job, and we have to do this collective work for the employer, so that they can get all the work done.
Como pueden ver, es un trabajo muy explotado. Yo siempre he dicho que los patrones tratan mejor a las vacas que a nosotros los trabajadores.
As you can see, it's a very exploitative work. I have always said that employers treat better the cows than the workers.
No importa el calor y el frío que hacen en el invierno, se trabaja las 24 horas en la industria lechera.
In this particular job, it doesn't matter the weather, if it's cold or if it's hot. You work, it's a operation, a 24-hour operation.
Me acuerdo en mi persona de trabajar con mucha presión. Cuando regresaba, como uno se calienta mucho la sangre y cuando uno regresa como a bañar, por ejemplo, me acuerdo hasta salía sangre en mi nariz que eso sentía que era el presión del trabajo.
I remember feeling my body very hot after working, and then I'll go and take a shower, and sometimes I have bleeding in my nose, and I felt like that was a consequence of that, of the environment.
Y eso, incluso en el frío en 2014, me acuerdo, estaba 20 bajo cero y tenía yo que ir a trabajar en la noche.
I remember in the winter, it was 20 below, and I had to work at night.
Eso es el trabajo que hacemos y enfrentamos alrededor, pero lo que me di cuenta es que ahí, conociendo a las organizaciones que me apoyan y tantas injusticias que existía, yo quería hacer un cambio. Por ejemplo, los guantes los vendían los patrones y yo quería que me lo dieran gratis.
And, that's the environment that I was in, but knowing the organizations and me feeling very strongly about these injustices, I wanted to do something about it. For example, they were selling us some of the gloves, the employers were selling us the gloves.
Y me di cuenta la razón principal ahí de que nosotros los trabajadores estamos muy hasta abajo, o los patrones, las compañías que compran la leche, no reconocen hasta hoy en día nuestra labor que hacemos todos los días.
And I recognized that, what was our place in this job, and we were all the way down, and the employers and also the ones who are all the way at the top do not recognize our labor.
Incluso hay incidentes en el trabajo, hay robo de salario, estamos muy aislados de los ranchos. Hay trabajadores que pueden salir a comprar su comida y hay trabajadores que no salen hasta años de no poder comprar su comida.
So there are many other issues, for example, wage theft and many other injustices. There are workers who, the only time that they get out from that environment is to perhaps go and get food. But then there are also other places where for years they cannot interact in the community, up north, where they don't even go out to get their food. Some other people buy it for them.
Al ir en la tienda, pues pagamos nuestro rate y, por ejemplo, los trabajadores que no pueden ir, los patrones le llevan su comida.
So when we go to the store, we have to pay for our ride. Sometimes the employers bring their food too.
Comiendo a veces como comida, por ejemplo, que no son frescas y que a veces ya no se vence, pero los trabajadores comen esa comida porque no se puede o no podemos ir a comprarlo, ¿verdad? La comida más fresca.
So we will buy food sometimes or get food that is not fresh because that's all you can get. You don't have the opportunity to go often to the store, and that's what you eat.
Y no solo eso, enfrentamos lo que enfrentamos todos los días, la intimidación de los patrones, por ejemplo, el miedo de no poder salir sobre los agentes de inmigración.
We also face intimidation from the employers and also, for example, in regards to immigration, not being able to go out because of immigration agents.
Solo por no tener un estatus legal, pero honestamente contribuimos muchísimo en este país.
Just because we don't have a legal status, but honestly, we contribute so much to this country.
Y no solo de eso, de estar tan lejos de la familia, es mucho estrés, mucha ansiedad.
And not only that, but also the stress and the anxiety of not being with your family and be away.
Solo hablamos con nuestra familia solo por teléfono.
We speak with our family over the phone, just over the phone.
Y después de los años de trabajo, hay muchos trabajadores que regresamos de nuestro origen, pero a veces regresamos con enfermedad o ya no es igual uno porque aquí los patrones lo explotan uno en el trabajo.
And for some workers who've been here for a long, long time, maybe they go back, but they don't go back the same. They might go back ill or sick because of all the exploitation.
He hablado con otros compañeros que regresan de que se juntan un poco de dinero, pero cuando regresan allá es lo mismo de su enfermedad y el dinero, eso es lo que ocupan muchas de las veces, el dinero no rinde nada.
So I have talked to some workers, And they said, they make some money, they went back, but then they use all that money to take care of their health. And so that's because they went back to sick.
Es triste escuchar esto, pero eso es lo que se vive todos los días.
It is sad to hear this, but that's what we live with every day.
So can we start talking a little bit about the organizing that Crispin did and that you helped him with, Rebecca?
Vamos a hablar del organizar, de lo que tú has hecho.
Mi compañera Rebeca va a añadir todo eso y en mi persona, pues, solo lo que he vivido y veo alrededor de lo que pasan mis compañeros, he tomado pasos adelante, es para el mejor condiciones de todos mis compañeros y en general apoyando a los trabajadores, no solo en Nueva York, sino también en otros estados.
So in my case, Rebecca's going to speak a little bit more about the organizing, but in my case, I took steps to do something about it, not only for my co-workers, but for other workers everywhere. Oops. Okay, so my name is Rebecca Fuentes, and I'm a lead organizer with the Workers Center of Central New York. And I'm just very proud to be here with all of you and my compañero Crispin Hernandez, a very courageous person. I know the theme of the conference is the truth in agriculture, and something important, the work that we do at the Worker Center is to organize. So what do we do when we see all these injustices? And there's many approaches, many ways to change, what is your theory of change? Some of you work within the legal framework. Some of you work with advocacy or social service. So the organizations like ours work with a focus in organizing. And that means that we believe in collective power. Collective power comes from everybody's voices, but organized. We might not have a lot of money, we might not have a lot of resources, but we have people power. And that is at the root of our organization and many other organizations that have, in the grassroots, basically. You don't have to be necessarily part of an organization or a nonprofit or whatever. We all do participate in things where we bring all of our voices in to change something. And that is basically what the Worker Center it's about. So we are a membership-based organization. Workers can become members of the organization, and they have some benefits. We call this kind of like a community union. With farm workers, we organize outside of the framework of the law, because as we know, most of farm workers at the federal level are excluded from basic rights. So many of you probably know that they don't, since the 1930s, when we got the basic rights for all workers under the Federal Labor Standards Act, farm workers and domestic workers were excluded from this. So they were excluded from very basic things like a day off in the workplace, overtime pay, and the right to collectively bargain or form a union or be recognized in the union. So that is at the federal level. Of course, each state can do better. So, but we know that this industry, and this is why we're having these conversations, and we are all sharing about how this industry, and in general, the capitalist framework and the corporations, they have so much power, and they're always fighting back. And so how do we, very small organization, fight this reality? And it is through organizing, agitation, and education. So the way that we connect with, for example, Crispin is we do outreach, we do a training. Back when I started this work about 9 years ago, I thought, because I was kind of an outreach worker in education, that all you need is education, right? But then that's not enough. How do you go from education to action? And so that's where you bring the framework of organizing. You have to, now that you have new information, how do we go from that to change when you have so many challenges for this population of workers, and in general for immigrants? You are outside of the law, the framework, you are also affected by living in a totally foreign country, also being chased by immigration. And so what do? You are not accepted in the community. We're talking about upstate, rural New York. 4 years ago, around the elections, Trump signs everywhere. Farm owners, most of them supportive of Trump. So you are there in a community that are already against you, but they need you. So it's very interesting and difficult to understand, how the same people that say that you shouldn't be there, they depend on you totally. But then at the same time, they're supporting. I think they're totally going against their interests, but that's how it is. A lot of them are seeing now because they're losing a lot of their workers. But so that's the reality. So when with somebody like Crispin speaking truth to power, being already affected by this reality all the way from his country, when he sees that somebody, a young man just like him, also lost his life at a dairy in New York. So when we go there and do education, and then we talk about action, so how do we do that? Then we go from there to bringing more workers and doing some having their collective voices, and just start to, what do we do so that workers are getting injured, workers are dying? So educating workers, forming a group, and go and talk to OSHA. And that's how we advocated, we successfully advocated for a local emphasis program, a program of surprise inspections in dairies, which brought the safety higher in the dairy. So now that's why you see Crispin wearing the protection that wasn't there before. It was before because we have worked collectively to bring this up. And this local emphasis program was enacted in the whole state. And that was just, when we see how much power we had doing that, then it gives us the motivation. I mean, we're in that place, we're advocating, and we're moving OSHA to do something, but we also awaken. We didn't realize how much power the industry had, and so we awakened the Farm Bureau and all of these organizations that have their interest of the farm owners, and so we start to learn about that, and we get educated through action on that. And that's from a small organization. And then we also, just like Larry mentioned, there's so many organizations out there working for justice, so we start partnering with them and learning. And so we bring, eventually, when Crispin gets more and more involved, he tries to organize a group of workers at this farm. The main goal was that they don't sell you the gloves, those long gloves that he's wearing there. Those were sold by the farm, and they were selling them a box for $10. The farm owners. And so he wanted to change that. So we had a small meeting with like 5 workers. This is the first attempt. After some other, house visits, but we have 5 workers ready to create like a committee. Then we get a knock on the door, and it's the son of the farm owner. And he threatens me, saying that I need to leave. And I said, why? I have the permission of the workers. They are free. And they say, yeah, she has the permission. And so he says, well, I'm not going to discuss this with you. And then he leaves, and he calls the police. And calling the police on immigrant dairy farm workers is a risk for them, and obviously a risk for the workers. But because these are small communities, they know who are the police. They're all friends. So it is their strategy to bring fear for the workers and for the organizers. And so we get the state police and the local police to intimidate them. They interrogate me, they separate us, they treat me like a criminal. They treat them also like, if, what are you doing? Like children, you should ask for our permission. But because we are organizers, and because Crispin also had been already more involved, we know that we have to be ready. So this wasn't a surprise. We had already talked about how we're going to respond when this happened. And so we were very successful that night, and we all celebrated that we fought the employer and we fought the police, and we're still talking, and we're going to have another meeting. And so those are the little steps that we take in those spaces that are so the employers have so total control over. You know, the workers live right there. The employers can, they can just knock on the door and say, it's your day off, I don't care, come and work. And that's what happens. So the next week, we tried to have another meeting, and only Crispin and another worker, Saul, they showed up. And so that's when we see the impact. You know, this was our attempt to do something, to organize. And the next day, even further, the employers fire both of those workers. So this is the retaliation, the intimidation, utilizing everything on their power to put the fear, to stop anything from happening. But fortunately, under this framework of working outside of the law and working in organizing, and them knowing that we are prepared for this, and we have a network of a community that have your back, so they were able to come to a safe place in Syracuse and continue to organize and escalate. And so we learn about who's buying the milk, and we go to that cooperative, Dairy Farmers of America, and we tell them, you know, you are buying the milk of a dairy that there's violence and there's against workers, there's health and safety violations, there's all kinds of things, and you're still there, you're still buying their milk. And this is one of your members. They don't do anything. We escalate. We eventually do a big rally. We have like 1,000 signatures. We do a petition, but nothing changes. We're asking the employers, the owners, to let the workers be free, to let them have the right, the constitutional right to assembly freely. That's in the Constitution. We're not saying they're having a union. We're just saying this is a constitutional right. They don't care, nothing happens. We keep going. Eventually we get the NYCLU to represent us in this fight. And that's how we get to the Hernandez versus New York, and and Crispin becomes the main plaintiff in this lawsuit. And you know, we start going further and further up the chain, and we see who is making the most money here. So the most money is being made by the processors. So our lawsuit is moving along, but also we keep going there. We keep moving on the food chain. We get to Chobani, and we have been talking to that company for some time now, educating them about this and challenging them. What are you gonna do about it? This is perceived as a good company. We are not saying it is not, but this is what is happening. You care about the environment, you care about the animals and the farmers. Where are the workers in your food chain? And so that's one example. I'm happy to say, and you mentioned it, we won the lawsuit on May 25th. I think Crispin made history, because now in New York, we have the courts found that workers in New York, even if they're farm workers, have the constitutional right to collectively bargain. Eventually, a few months later, we have legislation now that backs that up, and now starting in January, farm workers in New York will have some access to overtime pay after 60 hours, a day off, and the collectively right to organize. So those are very important things, but you see that all the work and all of the organizations, we have the support of unions like 32BJ, FLOC, and many others, and we're working along. But it takes a lot of work, and since the theme is about telling the truth, you know, for telling the truth, how much, you know, you have to endure. But under this, I think in our community, in the immigrant community, we're used to being outside of the framework of the law and just having to fight and organize and being against a very powerful that we do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca and Crispin. Thank you. Gracias. So, Larry, maybe we should come back to you, and you could talk a little bit about, tell us some more about what the community groups down in your area are doing to organize themselves, to fight industry, to work for themselves. But then there's also a question from the audience, which is, how do you suggest we, so I assume that means the people in this room, how can they help those communities?
Okay. There's a number of things that we've done over the years to try to highlight exactly what's going on. And I think Renee mentioned one in the film. We've done the normal, trying to talk to our legislators, but then we try to get creative every now and then. We had 2 years in a row where we did a vigil. We actually camped out on the lawn of the legislative, in front of the legislative buildings for 2.5 days. And we said, well, okay, so what's the big deal with that? Well, we decided we're going to be a little more creative with even that. So we took, we had some of our community members who built a little mock hog farm, and we actually took a little kid's swimming pool, and we made a little pump, and we didn't put water in it. We put hog waste in it, in the middle of the General Assembly, and we sprayed hog waste for 2.5 days. To try to give them some idea of what they're dealing with. Got a little bit of traction with that, but then we decided, okay, so we need to get a little more personal. So we drew straws. And I drew the straw that I got to take a gallon of hog waste and set it on the governor's desk. If you really want to see what's going on. Then we took 5 more gallons and we spread it throughout the legislature. When I mean, not really spread it, sorry, that was maybe a little misrepresentation. We thought about it. But we're doing things to just try to get people to understand what's going on. And films like this one, Eating Animals, the one that's coming out soon, if you haven't seen them, please take a look, because that's how we get the message. I wish that everybody, again, I'm going to go back to this whole come down and fly thing or come down and visit. I wish everybody could do that. And I know for a fact that, Amanda has a lot of understanding of what goes on, but I think that trip was additionally eye-opening to drive through Eastern North Carolina and see what's going on. When I first started this, like I said, I was an environmentalist. Really did not have a whole lot of idea what was going on. I'll kind of say on the other side as far as the environmental justice. And to some degree, the environmental justice communities didn't really see the benefit of us to some degree until we sat down around the table and said, hey, we've all got a similar thing that we're trying to accomplish. One of the best things that we did was to combine our efforts and combine the understanding of just what's going on in Eastern North Carolina. So a lot of it is reaching out to your neighbor, understanding that what I do impacts my neighbor, and vice versa. But then join those forces. I don't come at it the same way that the communities do. They don't come at it the same way I do. Mine's environmental, theirs is injustice. But it's going with them together to talk to our legislators, to go to rallies, to go to committee meetings, and stand up with them. It's a combined courage is one way to put it. There's safety in numbers to some degree. And as sad and as, I'll use the term maddening as it is, that we still are in a society where there exists environmental racism, should shame every one of us to our core. I'm no better than the people who are being forced to live in those communities, but I can sure as heck stand up with them to illustrate that this is not pushing something off on somebody else and forgetting about it. So what you all can do is get to the point where you're willing to stand up and say, okay? Maybe you all live here in DC, maybe it's someplace else in the country. You have a stake in this. S-T-A-K-E, not S-T-E-A-K.
Maybe both.
We are all responsible. And there's been some of the panelists earlier today were like, there's some very brainy people in this room today. But it's going to take all of that. Whether or not you decide to become a vegetarian or vegan, or I think flexitarian, was that the term? I'm using that one. Whether you decide to do that or not is your personal opinion. I can't force you to do that. But we can sure as heck give options as to what we can do. You don't live in Eastern North Carolina. Most of you don't live in North Carolina. Just understand that we are all in this together. And I think you've heard some of that kind of that vein throughout today's discussions. It's going to take every one of us from every angle that we can possibly think of. Legal, policy, changing the food system. Our food system is broken, people. It's broken. Even in addition to what we see with the swine and the poultry and the dairy and the cattle. Our food system is broken. We need to figure out what each one of us can do. Maybe that means you give up meat one day a week. If that's what you decide to do, God bless you. If you decide to go full flexitarian or vegetarian or vegan, God bless you for that too. But don't leave here today saying, wow, that was interesting. It's more than interesting. I believe our future depends on what we are doing in meetings like this one today. Good friend of mine, Rick Dove, who's also in Eating Animals, in the film, he makes a statement that just sticks with me all the time. Rick just turned 80. He said, there's enough left for me. There's enough left for me. I just turned 25, well, no, not 25. Anyway, I'm a little older. I'm a little older than most of you here. There's enough left for me. I have a 16-month-old grandson, and I'm sorry I always struggle getting through this part. I just spent 4 days with him. What is there for him? What am I leaving him? And I think one of the statements earlier was, it should not be up to the millennials or the Gen X's or the Gen whatever. So a lot of this stuff is over my head. We all have a stake in it. We can't just push it off to the younger generation and say, you all fix it now, we screwed it up. Good luck. No. Figure out what it is you can do. Raise your voice. You're here in DC, talk to your congressman. Talk to whoever you need to talk to. Spread the word that this is a real, serious problem. And it's not just in Eastern North Carolina or Iowa or Arkansas or Nebraska. We are putting people into a situation where their quality of life is in the cesspool. So figure out what it is you can do. And you certainly have a great resource here with the Government Accountability Project, and certainly that lady sitting right there. We love her, don't we?
Thank you. So we don't have a lot of time left. Rebecca and Crispin, I don't know if you want to say anything. We've alluded to a little bit about the current situation with immigration. And I know that where I live in California and in a lot of farm states, H-2A numbers are going up radically. There are a number of changes that are sort of happening behind the scenes. While there's all this talk about the wall and there's talk about keeping out, there's lots of people coming in and different rules, things changing. So I want to hear if you have thoughts about the current sort of regulatory situation, what we should look for, what we should hope for, maybe it's a better word, moving forward with the immigration landscape.
Yeah. Well, we just wanted to also mention something that we did in New York. Is part of it's called the Green Light Driving Together campaign, and we won it also this year, which was very important for us, which is going to help a lot in our state in regards to the isolation that many of the immigrants lived. And the Green Light campaign is basically to restore access to driver licenses for all immigrants in New York, regardless of their immigration status. Before that, there were only 12 states in the whole country that had that, and now we're the 13th state. And that was a campaign that had a lot of strength and motivation coming from farm workers. And what you're asking now is there's always been, we don't want you here, but hey, come on over anyways. But if you are without documents, that's even better because we can exploit you even more. And there's really, I think there's a lot of things that are happening right now. There's things like the blue card, and there's recently some movement around, I think it's the Modernization Act, the Farm
The
and
E-Verify
Modernization
thing,
Act.
is that?
Well, that brings, one of the things we don't like is that it's bringing it as part of the legislation is accepting E-Verified, which we see very problematic because even if we have immigration reform, we're always going to have people coming who are, because a lot of it is our fault as a country. We go out there and make a mess, and then in other countries, and then we ask ourselves, where are they coming? Well, a lot of it has to do with our own policies and our own, what we do somewhere else, and globalization and all of that. So it's always going to be immigration, undocumented immigrants, even if we have immigration reform. So E-Verify is very problematic because a lot of people who might have access to perhaps this regularization or this Modernization Act might not be eligible because they are not going to, they're just not going to be eligible. So what is going to happen to them? They're going to be replaced by perhaps this army of guest workers now. And that's very problematic for our community. A lot of the dairy farm workers are excluded from the guest worker program to begin with. So if we now have, through this new legislation, lots of guest workers coming in, what is going to happen with this community? They're going to be replaced. How are we going to deal with these issues? So it's a lot of things going on. We're struggling on are we for or against it? We belong to several organizations, or member organizations like the Food Chain Workers Alliance, and we're struggling. We also belong to the Alliance of Farm Worker Women, and we're struggling with it, how to respond. We don't like many things. Some of them are good. A lot of people will be benefit by this, but it might be a very high price to pay. Can we get something better? Can we change next year? Change course here in Washington and do the right thing, and then have immigration reform and better policies. We're looking into that, but it is not an easy answer. We want protection for people. We want DACA, but we want more. There's so many people that can benefit. So it's very, very hard. I think we're giving too much through this latest legislation, like always too much power to the industry. The industry is getting the best. They're going to be able to bring guest workers. They're going to have the E-Verify. They're going to do all these things. And maybe we're selling ourselves short. But that's what we're always struggling with. Something that I wanted to mention is in 2017, we published this report. It's called Milked, and it's immigrant dairy farm workers in New York State, and it's based on 88 interviews of dairy farm workers, including Crispin, and his story of organizing in one of the biggest dairy farms in upstate New York is here, and many other things around how many farms are in New York and how many are not even covered by OSHA because of regulations and exclusions and all kinds of things. And so if you want to see this, it's called milkedny.org. You can see it online, and you can see more information about our organization. And I will say just support grassroots organizations with your money, with your in-kind support. And I mean, I'm so happy that we now have the connection to FIC, and thank you so much for supporting us.
I think we're just about out of time. Are there any questions from the audience that haven't come through?
Certainly, that's in reference to the swine facilities. Just to kind of as a comparison, give you a little idea of how much we're talking about. And I'm sorry this topic is shortly after lunch, but there was a study done, Dr. Mark Sobsey at UNC, I think, where he was, and where they wanted to see just how much a hog produced. So I'm sure it was an unfortunate grad student that had the job of measuring how much a hog produced. And on average, an adult hog, about 250, 280 pounds, about twice my weight, produces 8 to 10 times the amount of fecal waste, and yes, that's the solid stuff, as a human every day. So you mentioned that there are roughly, we use the figure 10,000 hogs, 10 million hogs, I'm sorry. Think about that. 10 million hogs producing 8 to 10 times the amount of fecal waste as a human. So what do we do with that? The process is hogs are kept in these barns, which you saw from the aerial imagery. Can be 1,000, 1,500 in a barn. They stand on a concrete floor. It's a slotted floor. The stuff falls through it. It's collected underneath and eventually gets pushed down into what they call a lagoon, I call a cesspool. It sits in that cesspool day after day in the hot sun, just kind of fermenting. There is some biological and activity going on, but then it's sprayed out onto the field under the pretext of being fertilizer. Here's a quick story as to how that relates. This trip that we took to the state capitol with our swimming pool of hog waste, I signed the permit to give us permission to be there. So the facilities manager came out and he said, "What's in the pool?" Seriously, you know what's in the pool. He said, "Come with me." "Where are we going?" He said, "Just come with me." I said, "No. Why should I come with you? We need to talk." I said, "Well, we can talk right here." Long story short, we got a little further away. I had my phone open so other people could hear it. He said, "Let me tell you what. If you drop a single drop of that stuff on the ground, it'll be considered hazardous waste. We'll call the hazmat team in to clean it up, and your organization will be charged thousands of dollars for that cleanup process." I don't know what happened to that hog waste from the time it left Eastern North Carolina when it was fertilizer to get to Raleigh where it was now all of a sudden hazardous waste. So when I asked him that question, I guess he decided he was done with me. So we got no further impact from them. But the simple fact of spraying waste, untreated waste, on an open field under the pretext of fertilizer, running off with the rainwater into our creeks, streams, rivers, it's just preposterous. So the images that you saw, this stuff is very real, people, and that's like I said, if you don't see it for yourself, you may not completely get a real good feel for it, but it is utterly disgusting. It's a disgusting process. If we tried to do that with a human waste facility, people would lose their minds. It would never happen. But in Eastern North Carolina, that's the cost of doing business.
All right, we are definitely out of time. Thank you, all of you, Larry, Crispin, Rebecca, for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the audience for your attention.